Hello, my name is Victoria O'Malley, and I am so pleased that you have chosen this session today on Promises to Keep, aligning your brand promises with adult learner experiences. So a little bit of background on the origin of this presentation. I recently completed my doctorate at Northeastern University on this very topic, how the marketing or branding of an institution, how that aligns with the reality of the student experience for adult learners in an online master's degree program. And so I had several takeaways from this research experience, and I've been applying it to my work as the Senior Director of Marketing and Communications at the University of Denver, where I try to attract and retain adult learners to online programming. So I want to share with you some of these takeaways and what participants shared with me, and hopefully it will help align what you're promising with what you're delivering when it comes to marketing and communications for your programs. So first of all, are you feeling the pressure? Enrollment growth is essentially flat across the board, and yet competition is on the rise, not only from universities, of course, but from other educational providers online, opportunities, boot camps. And so this has created a somewhat growing and troubling trend, frankly, of predatory recruiting and marketing practices trying to attract learners to certain programs, perhaps by bending the truth a bit. And sometimes this is malicious with this intent, sometimes it's inadvertent. We're not quite sure, where things fall on that line, but I just want it to be something we're all aware of, that we need to be making promises that we're actually keeping. As marketing practitioners, we hold a lot of power when it comes to that, and selling essentially a product and making sure that that product aligns with the reality. So as we think about that trend, we're also seeing more and more being invested in marketing than ever before. So I wanted to kind of do a little cost breakdown here, and apologies to my Canadian friends. These figures are from the United States, but an estimated $100 billion will be invested by higher education institutions on marketing alone. So that's approximately 17% of what post-secondary institutions spend entirely annually in total. This is a huge number. And so we're really looking at higher costs to attract students, and of course the higher budgets to accommodate that fact. The average private nonprofit institution, now they're spending under 5% of annual revenue, so not quite as much, but certainly still a big chunk. And then we look at online programs specifically geared toward adult learners, and this is where they're spending upwards of 20% of annual revenue on marketing. If we look at institutions such as Southern New Hampshire University, which perhaps you may consider a competitor in your own space, they're spending percentages like this, and so it becomes hard to compete. But this makes it even more important for us to make sure that the promises we are making align with the reality of the experience. So let me do a little breakdown here of marketing and branding and how we're defining that in this context. So marketing essentially is the delivery of communication and information that may have value to customers, typically about reputation, the competitive advantage, overall brand, anything that differentiates that organization. Brand, I look at here as a subset of marketing, right? And this is a definition that's within the context of higher education, so I like it here. Essentially, a brand should reflect an institution's ability to satisfy the needs of students, engender trust. Trust is a big one here, that credibility piece, and of course, help prospective students make enrollment decisions. And so that's where marketing and branding come into play here. And I just wanted to set the stage with those definitions, though I'm sure you're very familiar with them at this stage. I do like this graphic to highlight the difference between marketing and branding. So marketing would be me telling someone I make the best apple pie, and branding would be somebody saying, I hear you're an amazing baker, right? See that little nuance there, the difference between the marketing and the branding? That's what we're striving for here, to have accurate marketing, and so our reputation and the brand can follow suit. So how do prospective students interpret brand? This was a really interesting question that I asked participants, these adult learners in an online master's degree program, because the results, the responses, really ran the gamut and were things that I feel were more features rather than benefits of whatever a program might be. So the flexibility piece, making sure it's online, those pieces to the participants, that contributed to their perception of the brand, whether or not the institution was ranked. It didn't matter what the ranking was, the number, the ranking body, but just that it was ranked, that it was accredited. So again, that credibility piece coming into play, that it was well known, and that it was large, like physically large, and had a large enrollment. So a lot of people viewed the institution to be more reputable and have a more positive brand if it was larger. So I thought that was an interesting piece. Obviously not something we can control as marketers. We are trying to build enrollment, I'm sure, but these were the pieces that came into play as the parts that contributed to the perception of the brand. So a quote here that I thought was particularly interesting from a participant. So in terms of a brand, technology, experienced professors, and a high-level ranking in the state. Maybe it's top 10 or top 15 in the country, I can't remember. I'm trying to remember if it's US News and World Report or who they quote. I find this really interesting because, again, they don't understand or remember what the ranking was or who did the ranking, but they just remember it was ranked. So that was really important to them. So then how do prospective students access information? This should come as no surprise to many of us, but it will help reinforce what we do every day, making sure that our web presence, our social presence, really strong and informative for those prospective students trying to make an enrollment decision. Also phone calls. Perhaps you have recruiters or an enrollment team making those phone call outreach. That's really important. Those conversations contributed to them better understanding the program. And of course, emails. That might be a drip campaign at the inquiry stage, or just emails back and forth with the recruiter or the faculty. That proved to be very beneficial for these prospective students. So this is a great quote here. The recruiter dropped her script and she talked to me as a person. It was made very personal to me and she spoke to me, not for the script. I think this highlights the real value in having authentic conversations and really being truthful in what that student experience will look like for folks and catering that message, customizing it to the individual you're talking to. This recruiter may have been using a script, but it didn't sound like one, right? So that's really important for those prospective students when they're making those decisions. It also highlights the value of making a personal connection with somebody and recognizing in an online program, you may be across the country trying to pursue this program as a student, and you want to have that kind of personal connection with somebody at the institution to make you feel more connected to it. So this was a great example of that. So what do prospective students expect? Expectations comes into play here when we're talking about the marketing and the branding and the expectations we're setting for prospective students. And then of course, trying to make sure there's fidelity between what you're promising in terms of those expectations and if the expectations are being delivered on. So these are just a few areas I thought you might find useful to understand what prospective students are expecting out of their institution, out of their educational experience here. So you have relevant and timely communication. That's, of course, key at every stage of the student journey, from point of inquiry to when they're a student, having that relevant and timely communication, really valuable. Those personal connections, as I mentioned previously, really important that when a student is not physically on a campus, perhaps, and if they're pursuing an online program, to create those personal connections in one way or another. Technology help, very important for folks who are pursuing an online program specifically, but even those in an on-campus program, they'll still need to know how to navigate the technology, and having access, perhaps 24/7 access to technology help is an expectation this day and age amongst those prospective students. Consistent academic experiences, really valuable as well, from class to class, but even within an individual class itself, making sure that it's consistent, they have continued access to their instructor and to their peers. I had one participant say that they were using different learning management systems throughout their experience, and just what a disconnect that created to jump from Blackboard to Canvas. And I'm not sure what the reason was behind those separate LMS setups, but that created a really confusing experience. So that consistency piece is really important. Then instructor presence, and this goes for courses that are on campus or online. Having a strong instructor presence If it's an online course, that means being present and active in the discussion boards. If it's on campus, that means, making sure the instructor is available, there are office hours, and that they're really engaged and involved in those courses, no matter what the modality. And then, of course, career support. And that, again, is throughout that student journey, not just at the point of graduation, if it's a traditional program and they'll be graduating, but during the coursework, having content, assignments, discussions all relate back to the career in some way was really valuable for folks to feel like they were climbing the career ladder or gaining skills that would be applicable to their career throughout their experience, not just at the end when they could perhaps talk with a career coach to get that next job, but throughout the educational journey. Then we have this quote here. Sometimes it's hard to get information from the right person at the right time. It's like pulling teeth. And my heart goes out to this participant who made this quote, who said this, because as a marketer, as a communicator, this is our worst nightmare, right? We want to make sure that students feel connected to the institution. They know who to go to if they have a question. So making sure that there's a person or a team that consistently can assist, right? And make sure that they students feel like they have that connection and that they know who to reach out to. And again, it goes back to that relevant and timely communication and us being really thoughtful as communication practitioners in terms of what are the messages going out, how frequently are they going out, are we inundating their inbox, are we being thoughtful about customizing and segmenting our lists. And so making sure on our side, the things that we control, we keep under a tight lid here. So what factors shape student satisfaction? Perhaps not surprising here, the student experience overall, whether it's online or on campus, that of course contributes to the student satisfaction. Social presence, that again goes back to instructor presence, whether it's online or on campus, having those connections with peers and being able to form a community of some sort really helped contribute to having higher levels of satisfaction among these participants. Service quality is an important piece, and here's where I'll give a bit of a definition. We're talking about academic services, administrative services, even the facilities. That could be a campus building, or it's the learning management system, and then just the student support overall. Perhaps that's academic advising, contact with the instructor, and then marketing and brand really do play a role in shaping student satisfaction, because we are setting those expectations up front and perhaps even throughout the program about what their experience will be like through the marketing and by trying to build up a positive brand perception. And so those pieces were really important as well. Now, I love this graph. I know it's a little basic here, but this was initially created for consumer purposes, but adapted for higher education. And it's essentially looking at what factors do marketers influence, right? So this is called the brand touch point wheel. And you have all these different touch points throughout the student journey, and thinking through as a marketer, what do we control or what can we influence? And so let's kind of go through this step by step. First, we have pre-admission touch points. Now, these are the pieces that as marketers, we really have the most control over, of course, like the advertising, any kind of social media presence, recruiter interaction, that could be through email or phone or in-person appointments. If you're doing any kind of email drip campaigns, again, you're shaping those expectations at each touch point. And these are all parts of the puzzle for that prospective student to help create that image of what you are and what you offer through all of these different touch points. And so thinking through what we as marketers may contribute to and what we influence. During the course touch points, this is where it becomes a little more removed from the marketer, right? So that instructor interaction, learning outcomes, course evaluations, peer interaction. Again, we don't really have a lot of say over that, right? The curriculum or the faculty side, academic side of house. However, just recognizing how this all plays a role in shaping the student expectation and shaping that satisfaction, really important. And the more we can set expectations that are aligned with reality for this experience, for the student experience, the better. And then we have post-passing touch points. So This is at the point when the coursework is over, they're going out into the world. Here's where graduation plays such a huge role. It's the last touch point you have major control over, really, and make sure that you're branding that experience, you're making it as positive as possible for your students who are graduating. I think that's why we put so much pressure on ourselves in the past year to provide virtual graduation celebrations for our students during the pandemic, just to make sure that they're having that positive last touch point with the institution, just so valuable in shaping that satisfaction. So really think through to yourself, which touch points do we control and how do we ensure fidelity, right? We might not control the curriculum, but we control how we talk about the curriculum to prospective students, right? And so really thinking through how you're ensuring fidelity throughout the entire journey, from the moment they click on an ad through to enrollment, through to graduation, making sure marketers are involved essentially at every step of the journey. I think that's really important. So I love referring back to that brand touch point wheel as a marketer to better understand, okay, what are the touch points I control or can talk about in any kind of marketing communication efforts prior to enrollment, and how do I make sure it's as accurate as possible? So that may involve talking to your faculty, working with recruiters, talking to program directors, and making sure we're all on the same page. So some next steps here that I just wanted to go through briefly as we move on here. And let me just check time. I think we're good. So first of all, approaching branding in a layered way. And here's what I mean by that. You want to make sure that the program is described as being feasible for the individual first, right? If they need it to be asynchronous online, is it affordable? Those are kind of the key features of a program that they'll evaluate first based on this research before they dig into anything else, right? They just, those kind of top line, okay, does this check all my boxes, essentially? And then you move into the credibility piece. That's where ranking and accreditation comes into play, and making sure you're playing that up in certain ways. Perhaps it's just a visual cue by using a ranking badge or an accreditation badge on the website or in your communication with a prospective student to indicate, okay, this is now credible. Then you can kind of get into your more values, mission, the branding pieces that make your institution stand out and unique, okay? So those differentiating factors come into play. So you have to kind of check off the box for feasibility, credibility, and then go into the branding, which might be a little backwards, right? Typically, we want to kind of start with, okay, this is what makes us different. We don't need to jump to that point yet. We really want to start with, okay, can I do this as a student, a prospective student? Can I do it? And is this legit? And once those questions are answered, then you can kind of move into the branding piece. Setting expectations for the online experience through marketing, right? Lots of opportunity here. Online course demonstrations, publicly posting the syllabi, or at least parts of the syllabi, might be really beneficial here to showcase what the coursework will actually look like. And maybe doing some learner profile assessments when students get on board, and better understanding their background, their history, their challenges, their goals, really valuable in helping to set those expectations for them. Prioritizing referrals for enrollment growth. I think this all just kind of comes together with this referral piece. If they have a positive experience, if the student is satisfied, then they will refer other folks to the program, and that's what we can all hope for. So this is the purpose of ensuring student satisfaction, of course, because once they graduate, hopefully they become brand ambassadors and refer the program to others. And then ultimately your role, next steps here, create ethical standards and proactively assess your branding authenticity. I think this is really important for marketing teams, communication teams, colleges overall, just to kind of sit down and think through what are those ethical standards that we will abide by, and how do we ensure that fidelity between what we're promising and what we're delivering? How do we work together? How do we collaborate? How do we communicate with one another to ensure that expectations align with reality? So important to do. And I think that is your next step. Leaving this presentation, hopefully you can go have some good conversations with your colleagues about how you're presenting the information and how it's being delivered. So I will end with some contact information. I would love to connect with you after this conference. And of course, we have a live Q&A going on. Would love to answer any questions you may have based on this presentation. And I just thank you for your time. And hopefully we can have some good conversation here about the fidelity of our marketing and our branding with the reality of the student experience and making sure it all aligns. So thank you so much and take care.